I'm Anzaira B. Rojas from the Family Planning Organization of the Philippines. And it's a member association of International Planned Parenthood, ISIOR. Next slide. So FPOP is one of the old organizations that support sexual and reproductive health services, as well as adults and sexual and reproductive health and rights. So I will talk about the issues of young people that are facing right now in normal or ordinary and in crisis situations, just like disaster and conflicts or armed areas. In today's Facebook generation hits the largest population of young people in all times. According to UNFPA, about 1.8 billion young people are aged between 10 to 24 years old, accounting for a quarter of the world's population. The overwhelming majority of young people live in low and middle income countries, and almost 65% live in Asia. And in ASEAN countries, it's about 162 million people aged between 10 to 24 as well. We all know that young people are one of the society's important or most valuable resources. And when we invest to them or to us, there will always be a great effects. There is a huge difference of situation of adolescents a decade before and today. As early as adolescent stage, right now, they are more open and expressive in engaging to sexual activities. So on the next slide, I will share some of the experiences of young people in Asia and the Pacific in terms of sexual and reproductive health issues. They're more expressive in engaging to sexual activities that leads to unplanned pregnancies and unsafe abortion. However, indecent transition also occurs during a time when young people may not have fully developed impulse control or rational decision-making capacity. Disable to negotiate safe and consensual sex. And globally, young people aged 15 to 24 experience the highest rates of sexually transmitted infections of any age group, and accounted for 42% of new HIV infections in 2010. An estimated 16 million girls aged 15 to 19 years give birth every year. And indeed, maternal disorders remain among the leading causes of death of girls aged to 15 to 19 in low and middle income countries. And to add on that, around 30% of young people, specifically women aged 15 to 24, have ever experienced physical and or sexual violence and abuse. And it's a significant proportion of young people reports that their first sex was coerced or forced. So in the next slide, so these are the things that I shared, the data that I shared a while back. And for the next slide, I would really love to share to you what are the good practices in Asia and the Pacific. What are the things that we have in response to these issues, emerging issues to young people's sexual and reproductive health. So the first good practice that we have, next slide please, is comprehensive sexuality education. Comprehensive, age, developmental, appropriate, non-judgmental, gender-responsive, culturally sensitive sexuality education. There are evidences that will prove that CSE is an effective intervention for a behavior change to young people to become healthy, successful, and respectful individuals in the society. 4 years ago, I attended the peer education training. It's all about CSE, or Comprehensive Sexuality Education. And we had an activity called Agree or Disagree. The facilitator provided a series of questions or statements, and I was a participant back then. And if you agree on that statement, going to the right, and if you disagree, you're going to the left. So I will never forget this statement. The facilitator said, "Are you going to provide a condom to an 18 years old sexually active?" And my answer 4 years ago, of course not. Why should I provide a condom to an 18 years old? I will provoke that girl to become promiscuous. But here I am right now, speaking in front of you, discussing sexuality education, and sharing all our good practices and evidences that CSE is really an effective tool in behavior change to young people. UNESCO had a report that regarding sexuality education in Asia Pacific, and existence of sexuality education curricula and teachers training are countries are do offers, just like Philippines, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam. But again, there are still limitations, specifically on capacity building of the teachers. That's why, next slide please. In 2010, in my organization, FPOP, we had a project called Choices. And it caters CSE and youth-friendly services among young people. So back then, we tried to partner around 3 divisions offices or schools in the Philippines to integrate CSE in formal schools. We successfully piloted CSE teaching guide in elementary and high school, and as well as to conduct a consultative workshops on reproductive health and sexuality education in the Philippines. With the assistance of Department of Health and Department of Education, we conducted 4 consultative regional workshops on reproductive health and CSE in the Philippines. And it was very successful because in here, we learned what are the things that we're going to provide, what are the topics that we need to share to the young people in this age. This is a crucial step identified to making such initiative possible. The network conducted the consultative workshop. The activity discussed and consult the stakeholders, just like CSO, teachers, parents, youth-led organizations, and teachers as well, regarding the good practices and the challenges on sexuality education in the Philippines. So the outcome of the 4 regional consultative workshop, next slide please. So these are the networks. This is the partner of the 4 consultative workshop done last year. And the outcome is, the outcome process documentation of the 4 consultative workshop was shared to the Department of Education. And we are hoping that Department of Education really integrate it to the existing development of the K-12 curriculum. And at least we are happy that DepEd is open in engaging teachers as well and their students in this kind of initiative. But it is also important to note that not all countries provide sexuality education. Some countries must invest in this effective intervention to support scale up or inclusion of school-based sexuality education in both primary and secondary schools. The lessons learned from the series of consultations was that there was pressing need for the capacity building of teachers in terms of comprehensive sexuality education. There are a lot of manuals, modules that we can Google or ask from some institutions. But if a teacher or educator is not capacitated on how to deliver, for example, discussion on sex, relationship, STI or HIV, I think there's a really need to provide capacity for them. It is also relevant to consider those who don't have the access for education Setting up an alternative learning system that the Department of Education have can provide free access to education to out-of-school youth, include comprehensive information on sexuality education and life skills training is also important. Some organizations do targets out-of-school youth, the gangs in the communities, in the barangays, just like the Youth Peer Education Network, Pilipinas, PAMACU, and some of the youth-led organizations here. They really implement peer education to promote and discuss CSE. Peer education is also an important tool and instrument in reaching young people. It's a peer-to-peer approach that tackles different methodologies in teaching sexual and reproductive health and rights and HIV topics. Next good practice that we have: meaningful participation of young people in governance and programming. In Family Planning Organization of the Philippines and in IPPF, really ensure that there is 20% composition of our local and national board are young people. We also ensure that we have and we implement the Child and Youth Protection Policy. And we also follow that we must provide opportunities for people living with HIV to work in our local chapters, for example, in our offices. Involvement of young people as well in the recent passage of reproductive health is very crucial. Next slide. The Youth Consortium for the Reproductive Health is an instrument. It really represents the youth that amplify voices in behalf of the Filipino youth for the passage of reproductive health law. It is composed of different vibrant peer educators, activists, and young people in different communities in the Philippines. It was created in order to represent the young Filipinos that they need and we need the reproductive health services in the Philippines. I started as a volunteer in FPOB when I was 14 years old. And since then, and right after passing the board exam, I thought I will apply. My dream was to enter, to become a nurse, clinical nurse in a big hospital in the Philippines. But when I was engaged in different projects in the FPOB, I just realized that I have a mission to the community, specifically in reproductive health law. I graduated in a Catholic school. 4 years ago, one of my clinical instructor learned that I'm working in reproductive health. He called me. He nagged at me and he told me why I chose this network or this advocacy or this kind of field in nursing. But last year, same clinical instructor, same person called me up and he congratulated me to all the things that we are doing, specifically for young people, sexual and reproductive health and rights. So I do believe that meaningful youth participation in programming, it is very crucial in order for young people to learn on the things that we need to promote and ensure that young people are claiming their rights as well. Next slide, please. The next good practices that we have is to provide access to youth-friendly health services. Access to quality SRE services, particularly for unmarried young people, is limited in Asia and the Pacific. Contributing to low use of condoms and contraceptives and delayed care seeking. Substantial efforts are required to improve access to youth-friendly services. FPOP, for example, and IPPF provide free access to youth-friendly services among key affected population. Right now, we have projects that really reach the poor, marginalized, socially excluded, and underserved young people and the young key affected population, namely young LGBTQI, young MSMs, young sex workers, and young mothers. A diverse choices of SRH services like counseling, STI screening and treatment, prenatal and postnatal check-up, and of course HIV, and provision of safe post-abortion services must be included. So those are the things that we provide and are good practices or best practices in reaching young people in a normal situation. And right now, in the next slides, I will share to you what we are doing and what are the good practices in providing SRH in humanitarian response. But before that, I would love to show you this very moving film or short clip on the response of UNFPA and FPOP in Typhoon Washi in Cagayan de Oro. Okay, so while they are preparing the video, again, humanitarian issues is emerging situation in the Philippines. Personally, our home, our house, or I experience typhoons yearly. Our house is always submerged in water every year. So I have a personal interest or experience in humanitarian response. And okay, this is the video and it is ready. Thank you. In the short clip, you will going to notice that there are a lot of young people. And young people, last humanitarian response in Cagayan de Oro, were very instrumental in shaping the response, specifically in targeting young, pregnant, and lactating women. In the area, we organize young people, we organize queer educators as well, and provision of minimum initial service package. We provide medical missions to pregnant and lactating mothers. And we also develop new sets of young champions in humanitarian response. The peer educators in Cagayan de Oro last 2011 are now the staffs and the frontliners in the humanitarian response in the Typhoon Haiyan and even the Typhoon Bopha. So, in normal and crisis situations, we're going to notice that it is very important that we provide services, SRH services to young people. In the normal situations, there are some gaps and lacks, and we are lacking some important services for them. How much more in a humanitarian response? So these are the key recommendations that we would like to share in providing SRHR services in normal and humanitarian response. Number one, support efforts to create a more supportive environment for young people's SRH, specifically the laws and policies that we have in Asia and the Pacific. Number two, conduct research to identify the gaps in reaching young people, like unmarried, sexually active young people, LGBT young men. We still lack and we still have gaps in the data. Number three, increase the quality and coverage of comprehensive gender-sensitive and life skills-based sexuality education. And number four, improve access to youth-friendly healthcare services. Number five, increase youth participation in policy programming. Those are the things that we need and we would like to see in the next years in Asia and the Pacific. Because you are the champions right now here. And when you go back in your countries, I hope that you had inspiration and motivation in the things that we are doing in the field, specifically for young people in normal and crisis situation.
Thank you very much. I think this is